If you're doing your job today the way you were doing it 3 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, then I can virtually guarantee you are not using AI to its fullest extent. Every day or every week, I need to learn. I need to be smarter this week than I was last week. But the real value of training is to tell them the jobs to be done that benefit from AI. Sometimes we're going to make the right call, sometimes we're not going to make the right call, but we're always learning.
All right, I'm super excited for this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast. Why? Because I get to say my name throughout the entire interview. I'm here with Shawn from Microsoft. Shawn, before we dive into the questions, I love saying your name. Can we give the audience a brief background of your career up until this point?
You bet. Well, first off, thank you, Shawn, for inviting me on this. It's great to be here. And I love the fact that we've spelled it the same way and everything's going to be great today. My career at Microsoft started way back in 1994. I was studying computer engineering, computer science at the University of Southern California. Had a chance to come up to the Bay Area to be an intern for the Office Group. Spent 12 weeks here, absolutely loved it. Came back for another summer internship and eventually joined Microsoft full-time as a product manager in the Office Group, specifically on PowerPoint in the summer of 1996. And so 29 years later, I'm still here. Today, I have two roles in the company. The first one is I'm the general manager with accountability for PowerPoint. And then I'm also the engineering site leader for Microsoft's Bay Area presence. And I think a lot of people may not recognize just how big of a Bay Area presence we have here. We have people from Mountain View all the way to San Francisco working on everything from consumer products to commercial products, incubating V1s to rebuilding well-established high-scale products. We have people working on hardware and software and really doing groundbreaking work with AI. And so I have a chance to work with all of those leaders today.
Now, Shawn, you had mentioned something there that I can guarantee no one else has said on this show with the 250 plus episodes, and that is working at one company for your entire career. Now, what is that like? I mean, that's rarer than a unicorn in Silicon Valley. So tell us, why just one company your whole career? What has been kind of the trade-offs versus jumping around every other year? That is, I mean, that's pretty much the most common thing here is 12 months here, 24 months there. Not this, especially in tech, one company that many years. Tell us about that.
Yeah, sometimes you just land in the perfect spot at the perfect time. And that's really what has happened to me. Over those 29 years, I have played so many different roles as a product manager, as a vice president, general manager. I have worked on everything from working with vendors in terms of content production to designing features that millions of people use. I've worked on really high-end technical work like API design. I've worked with governments and international standards bodies on file formats. I've really been able to move around a responsibility perspective in the company to learn different skills, work with different people. And that really has really satisfied my desires for my job. Ever since I was a new employee, I had three very clear rules about my job. Every day or every week, I need to learn. I need to be smarter this week than I was last week. And so if I'm learning, that's great. Second, I love my job. I will work 60, 70 hours if I can, but I want to know that I'm delivering impact. I'm having some positive impact inside the company, outside the company, but I want to know the work I put in is actually like impactful and meaningful. And then lastly, and I realize this sounds cliche, but it's the people. I want to be surrounded by people who inspire me. I always love to say that I'm usually the dumbest person in the room, so I'm constantly learning from everybody around me. And I've just been fortunate that over those 29 years, Microsoft has been able to deliver on all three of those dimensions very, very consistently. So I've just been incredibly lucky in my job. You ask a little bit about like the positives and the negatives of this thing. Like, every circumstance has them. On the positive side, I think it really starts with relationships. I've been in the company 29 years, and the number of people, customers, partners, competitors, and yes, coworkers that I've known longer than I've known my wife is shocking. And we're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. So like I have relationships where I can call people and say, hey, I'm confused. Like, how do you think about this? Or I heard you were having a trouble with a particular problem. Let's sort of troubleshoot it. And that has been incredibly meaningful for me is that the creation and the curation of those relationships. The other advantage that I've seen is that I've been able to see evolution play out in front of me. And this is everything from Microsoft's corporate culture and how it has evolved over almost 30 years, how we run teams, how we build organizations, how we engage with our customers and build products. I get to see that play out in real time. And I have all these frames of references that I can look for patterns and I can look for lessons. And that helps me start thinking about when the next disruptive moment comes, hey, how is this going to play out? What needs to change and what should we be worried about? So I think there's a lot of advantages to it. If I think about the negatives, I think the biggest negative for me is that I have to take ownership of my networking and my external learning. If I go years and my network is purely within Microsoft, that's a problem for me. And so I have to be very, very proactive. I'm out there talking to people at other companies, competitors, customers, people in the university systems and the venture capital community, because it's on me to build that network beyond my company. And similarly, from a learning perspective, I need to be able to understand how are other companies dealing with some of these disruptive moments, AI, COVID, return to the office. And so it just falls on me. It's going to be a little more difficult for me than somebody who's bouncing around, to your point, every 12 to 24 months.
There's two things there that you'd mentioned that it'd be great to dive a little bit deeper on. One, I'm really curious, over 29 years, you had talked about how kind of things evolved, culture evolved. How did the culture evolve over 29 years? Because I'm just thinking about the number of employees alone. Like, it's been an exponential growth. And then what was also really interesting you mentioned was being it on you to develop this network outside of work. Do you think that, well, now with work-life balance, people are ignoring that life outside of work in Silicon Valley? Do you think people are a little bit too heads down at the computer versus getting out there and meeting people outside work? Like, how important a little bit more is that network outside for personal development, personal growth, work-life balance? So two, I'm not sure where you want to take the conversation, the culture at Microsoft or the life outside, but either or is great.
Well, let's talk culture, because I think culture really is the thing that is the most likely driver of success. And in my experience, the culture at Microsoft has changed. When I first started, we were a very tech-focused company. Like, we were on the cutting edge of technology. We really were pushing the envelope on tech. And I think that's what really set Microsoft apart for 10 years, for the first maybe 10 years of my career. We were a hardcore tech company. And then, we then went to a different era where we were really scaling. We were embracing the cloud, getting, in particular, PowerPoint on different endpoints. Like, we used to be on a Windows desktop and a Mac desktop. And today we're on the iPad and Android phones and iPhones, and we're running in the web app, and we've got services. And so I think there was this massive culture where we were valuing scale. How fast can we scale broadly? How can we meet customers where they are, start satisfying their emergent needs? But I would say the culture under Satya really has been around this growth mindset. And for me, this is the most empowering thing I've ever experienced from a career perspective, where it's okay to say, I don't exactly know right now, but I know how to find out. And that changes the entire dynamic of reviews and meetings and incubation efforts and debates, where we get to lead with curiosity and sort of figure out, sometimes we're going to make the right call, sometimes we're not going to make the right call, but we're always learning. And so for me, that's been the biggest moment, which is why I've never been more excited to be at Microsoft. This is, again, going back to my philosophies around what I want in a job. I work with inspired people. I deliver great products, and I'm constantly learning. And to me, that really is the best of Microsoft culture. Now, the other question, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say about the work life outside of work.
Yeah. So on that side, I used to think of things as work-life balance, where there was work and there was life, and my job was to balance these two things. As I've gotten older, what I've realized, it's more about work-life integration. These two things do not exist separate. They exist together. And my job is to figure out how to integrate them in a way that works for me and my family and my company. And so, when we think about networking, for example, I was down the street 4 or 5 houses down for a barbecue celebrating 4th of July. I've got somebody at Google sitting next to me, somebody from Applied, and we're just having conversations. And that is the thing. So it's not like there's a dedicated network event I have to go to. I have to be very thoughtful in every moment of life. But as I go to a dinner party or as we go to a concert, I may run into somebody at another company and we may forge that friendship right there. And I have to remember, hey, reach out on LinkedIn, connect with the person, send them a note, and make sure that we continue to invest in these relationships. So I don't necessarily think it's a balance. I think it's more about thinking about it from an integration perspective.
And you'd mentioned also PowerPoint right there. I mean, general manager of PowerPoint. I'm curious about how that, especially now where you mentioned the idea of how do we develop, how do we grow? How are you reimagining storytelling right now in the AI era?
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time. I always like to start with our mission statement because that's the thing that every single person on PowerPoint wakes up every day and reminds themselves, this is why we're here. And why we're here? Well, we're here to empower people and organizations to tell the world's most compelling stories to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And this is a reflection that when you look at the hundreds of millions of people who use PowerPoint on a monthly basis, it really encompasses almost everybody. Every walk of life is there. My 13-year-old daughter, she's using PowerPoint to sell Girl Scout cookies. This is the same product that people are driving up Sandhill to go get capital for their startup. It's the same product that governments are setting national policies, that multinational firms are redefining the modern labor market. This product is used by everybody. And what gets me excited about AI is this allows us to do things that we've wanted to do for decades, but finally the technology is here. And so as it relates to PowerPoint, I think of AI as your partner. It's somebody you're going to collaborate with to accomplish whatever your goal is. And so it starts out with trying to understand what's the purpose of your presentation. Nobody gives a presentation just for the heck of it. There's always some purpose. And so it's going to help you redefine, like, what exactly is that goal? It's going to help you create the narrative. This is one of the hardest things for people to get right, is what is the narrative of the story I want to tell? And a lot of tools today, a lot of technology does not help you here. But this is where AI certainly can play a role. Once you've got your narrative constructed, it's all about finding all the data points, all the assets that you could use to tell that story, and then finding ways to visualize that data. I don't know about you, but I don't have a visual arts background. So the idea of figuring out how to take data and visualize it in a way that my audience can understand it, can recall it, and can apply it is very challenging for me. But AI is really good at this. And so your AI collaborative partner is going to be able to take care of that. And the list goes through the entire workflow, everything from creating speaker notes, helping you present, even following up. But for me, one of the coolest things about this is it allows us to leverage the slide metaphor, which I think is one of the most powerful metaphors in all of productivity, but still allow you to move storytelling into new mediums. People love creating presentations, but more and more people want to present those presentations as video. And video can be very challenging to build. But if you're using slides and then using AI to create the video, that now all of a sudden lowers the bar to using video as your storytelling medium. And so for me, that's just an incredibly exciting opportunity for us.
Okay, now you mentioned AI a couple times there, but how does a company encourage its employees to use AI? And, well, I mean, from the leader standpoint, because there's going to be employees that are going to push back. They're going to say, hey, this is how I've done it for the last 20, 30 years. I don't need this. Like, how do you get them to adopt, to use without disrupting the culture?
Yeah, the thing I would say is all of your listeners should go read Microsoft's latest Work Trend Index report. I'll shorten it to WTI. But in that report, which is really a collection of worldwide survey data, a bunch of data from researchers, economists, we layer in a bunch of telemetry data for how people are using the product. And it gives us a sense of how work is evolving, and in particular, how AI is changing things. Now, one of the things that came out of the 2025 report is this notion of a frontier firm. And it's really a way of thinking about how to run your organization. And I want to be very clear here. A lot of people hear frontier firm and they think big multinational, thousands of people. But this lesson can be applied to an organization of one all the way to an organization of hundreds of thousands of people. And what defines this way of thinking is you take AI and you deploy it org-wide. In 2024, it was in vogue to do little pilots and sort of experiment. But the technology has evolved where if you want to be successful as an organization, you need to be on the cutting edge of AI. You need to be using it. Best way to do that, deploy it broadly. The second thing is you need to be able to take advantage of what we call intelligence on tap. And one way to think about this is, your house is drawing so much electricity, you plug in a new appliance, and the electricity company just gives you automatically more electricity and everything is fine. We're at the point where you can do that with intelligence, where, hey, I have a new problem, I need some intelligence to help me, and I just get a little bit more intelligence when I need it on demand. When you think about that kind of construct, now you're thinking like a frontier firm. And then the last thing that we see with people thinking like a frontier firm, they're running what we call hybrid teams, combinations of humans and agents, AI agents that are doing tasks on their behalf, on the organization's behalf. And when you do these three things, it gives you the ability to scale faster, and it gives you the ability to generate results much, much faster. Now, the question is, okay, so leadership has this mental model of, hey, we're a frontier firm, we want to go fast. The three things that leaders can do, one is training. I think a lot of people don't really know what to do with AI. So even those group that want to, they're not exactly sure how to do it. And so, yes, you've got to tell them like, hey, these are the tools and click here and click there. But the real value of training is to tell them the jobs to be done that benefit from AI. AI will solve lots of our problems, but it will not solve all of them. And so the more you can point them in the direction of success, the more they're going to sort of understand the value. They're going to try it. They're going to lean in more. The second thing we need to do is to get people sharing their experiences. Because you're right, some people are going to be skeptics. Hey, I've always been doing it this way. It's never been bad. Why would I ever try something new? Until a coworker tells them, hey, that 4-hour task you've been doing, I did it in 5 minutes and I had no errors. That's going to cause people to maybe take a second look at AI and start to experiment on their own. But the single most important thing I've learned as a way to activate people leaning into AI in an organization, and again, this applies to small companies to big companies, is giving people permission. And the story I want to tell is a little bit about what happened to me, as a 22-year-old coming out of college many years ago. The internet was nothing like it is today. And our general manager realized that AI was going to have a transformative effect on society, on teams, on culture, on products. And so his challenge was that every one of us would spend an hour a day playing on the internet. He didn't care what we did. We didn't have to report out. We didn't have to document anything. He just wanted us exposed to this technology. And I got to see it change the way we ran the group, the way we organized things, the way we built work product, the products we built. And it had a massively transformative effect. But I wouldn't have done that had the guy running the org not told me it was okay. And we're in the exact same moment with AI. People don't know if they're allowed to play with AI. And if they fail, what happens if they fail? And so as managers, we have to be front and center, telling people it's not only okay to work with AI, but it's an expected part of their job. And so if we give them permission, we help them understand where likely routes of success are, and we have them sharing both, the successes and the failures, you're going to be able to activate people to lean into that AI disruption. And we see this with the WTI data. About half of managers believe that one of their priorities for 2025 is AI upskilling of their employees, because this is the way that it's going to advance their organization or their company.
With that, so I'm kind of thinking, getting people to use AI, great, but what happens when maybe they're relying too much on AI? Like, where's that sweet spot of using AI too much, not using it enough? And how does the manager, the leader, kind of set that boundary for that range? Or maybe even how does a startup from day one kind of think this is where AI should be, this is where it should not be? Any thoughts on that?
So let's take that question and break it into two. Let's take the easy part first, which is, am I using it enough? The answer to that, or the test that I always say, is if you're doing your job today the way you were doing it 3 months ago, a year ago, 3 years ago, then I can virtually guarantee you are not using AI to its fullest extent. People have to be redefining their jobs and the way that they do those jobs as an indicator that they're actually leaning into AI. At Microsoft, we actually measure this. Are we using AI day in, day out for product managers and technical program managers, our data science team, our engineers? Because this is the way that we will transform our organization. So if you're doing the same thing you did 3 months ago, you're clearly not using it enough. On the other side of the question, I might suggest that we think about it slightly differently. It's not so much around, are you using it too much? What I worry more about is, are you using it in the right way? Because there are pitfalls with AI. I'll give you an example. So I asked my team maybe a week or two ago to put a report together for me. I needed them to do some research. It was very, very tight turnaround. There wasn't a lot of time to do this. I mean, admittedly, we would normally spend a month or two on something like this. And I, as the mean boss, gave them about 3 days. And they knew they had to lean into AI. And I was a huge fan. So I said, hey, go use AI and come back. And they gave me this wonderful report. And as I was looking at it, I started to do what I like to encourage everybody to do, which is to think about, does the result of the AI output match my point of view? Does it match my understanding of the world? And start looking at things from a skeptical point of view. And at some point, as I was reviewing the collateral, I was like, I don't think this is true. And so I sent it back and I said, hey, I'm a little confused here. This is my experience. This is what's in the report. And that was one where we identified that they relied on AI a little too much. It built the table for them. They skimmed it, but they didn't validate all the data. And that's why when you're using AI tools, you want to prefer tools that help you understand the lineage of the conclusion, give you the citations. Where did the data come from? Because if you're not validating it, you're simply not doing your job. AI is going to help accelerate you closer to that point of success, but it's not going to do all the work for you. And so for me, I'm looking for those markers of, have they validated things? Do they double check the work? And if they're not, then that's an opportunity for us to learn and get better about using AI.
With AI, I mean, right there, you're talking about, getting things done in a shorter amount of time, be more productive. Is there any worry about teams losing creativity? Or, I mean, how can you use AI on that creative front, not just to get stuff done in a short amount of time?
Yeah, in fact, I'm a big believer that AI is going to make us as a society more creative. So as somebody responsible for one of the more creative products, this really excites me. And again, we can look at the data to help us understand why this is important. 79% of Bay Area workers don't believe they have enough time to get their job done. I don't know about you, Shawn, but man, I am always pressed for time and I'm grabbing 5 minutes here and 10 minutes there. This is a problem for our workforce. And we talked a little bit earlier about work-life balance or work-life integration. And so people just need to get work done faster. And what's really difficult is the average worker is interrupted, and get this, 275 times a day. This resonates again. I got a phone, I've got my digital watch, I'm always getting interruptions, and that keeps me out of flow. And when I'm out of flow, I cannot be my most creative. And so if we can use AI to sort of automate the mundane, take care of those repetitive tasks, that's going to create space for creativity. I always like to ask people, does anybody like to copy and paste data out of a spreadsheet, drop it into a presentation tool, and then visualize it? I, for one, don't. But that is something that is incredibly important to many business processes, but it's also something that AI is incredibly good at. We write these papers at Microsoft on strategy. It's obviously done in Word. They're 15, 20-page papers. But at the end of the day, we have to present them to our teams. So often I would take this 20-page paper and I would start manually building a PowerPoint presentation out of it. Today, I simply tell Copilot, there's the paper. I need a presentation that meets these characteristics. And in a minute, I have a done presentation, make a couple tweaks because I got a little bit of a type A personality, and I can go on stage and present to the team. And so the more we can automate the mundane, we're going to create space for the creative tasks. And what I love about it is, Bay Area workers, many of them are already using AI. And why are they doing it? 2 primary reasons. It's fast with high quality. That's about 32% of people will cite that. The other thing is that people see AI as having an unlimited creativity capability. And, I, for one, suffer from the cold start problem. I need to write a paper. I pull up the document. It's blank. I'm like, oh, how do I want to approach this? And I sometimes, like before I had AI, I would want to go and talk to somebody and say, hey, can we just brainstorm? Like, what are some ideas? What's kind of the structure? Well, now I can just, riff back and forth with the AI. Give me a structure for this. Oh, I don't like this. Replace this with that. Let's try again. And AI gives me the ability to get going. And again, that gets me into flow. It gets me into that creative space. And so for me, my personal experience, this has unlocked hours and hours and hours for the more valuable, at least from my perspective, activities of my job, which is usually around creativity and working with my team.
Okay, so say someone is now, they've adopted AI, they're using it in their work process, they're more and more creative. Well, at some time they have all these AI agents everywhere. How do they become, the boss of the AI? How do they become an AI agent boss?
Yeah, so that's a term that we find in that Work Trend Index report. And it speaks to that exact point, Shawn. We're going to see AI, in particular with agents, more and more prevalent in, again, all organizations, big and small. And so what we believe is that there is a new role or a new discipline in these organizations that we like to call agent bosses. And what that means is this is a person who they build agents, they delegate work to agents, and they manage agents. You can think of them as a CEO of a team of agents. The skills required here really are around how to articulate outcomes. And I'll give you a great example. You could tell an agent, just go build me a document about the history of education in the United States. It will dutifully return you a 10, 15 page paper that talks about that. But how do you know that's the paper you needed? So you've got to be able to define what success looks like, how you would measure success, so that the agent actually goes back and not just does work, but does work on your behalf to make you more successful. So these agent bosses have to be able to articulate outcomes. They have to understand what questions to ask. And then, of course, to understand how to experiment and learn, because we're all building this playbook as we go. And so that kind of skill set is incredibly important. It starts with understanding the AI technology today. But again, I will go back to those roles that us as leaders can help people become agent bosses, give them the training, give them the opportunity, the space to experiment, get them sharing their experiences, and most importantly, giving them permission that maybe they want to reinvent their role. And maybe this agent boss is the role of the future for them.
So I'm also thinking about with these AI agents, or an AI agent boss, all these AI agents. Going back to the idea of maybe one day there'll be that one person unicorn company, or right now you'll get these Fortune 50 companies where the CEO has all these resources, all these experts, the CEO coach, this incredible board, this speech coach, the unlimited resources versus the solo entrepreneur, the solo founder. How can using AI take that one person team and give them the same resources as that CEO of a Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company?
Yeah, I love the framing there, because that's exactly the mental model that I think about when I think about AI. I go back to the Fortune 50, the Fortune 500 CEO. Think of the team that they've assembled around themselves. They have a chief of staff to sort of keep everything going. They probably have a team of executive administrators who are managing schedules and meetings and travel and whatnot. They probably have a business manager. They have a communication director. They have an entire team around them. And that gives them incredible scale, and it amplifies their ability to drive impact. And I think it's fair to say we wish every person in every organization had that level of support around them. But simple economics tell you that is not going to happen. It doesn't scale to everybody. It's why the CEOs have it, but not the newest intern. But with technology, especially AI technology, there's no reason why everybody can't have the same team that a CEO has. And so for that startup founder who's a one-person shop, two-person shop, you've got to be thinking about how to use AI to give you those advantages. I'll give you an example. In my role as the site leader for the Microsoft Bay Area, I work with Angela, who's my communication director. And whenever we're doing some kind of comms, internal or external, she's always the one that drafts the first version for me. We go back and forth a little bit, and then we publish it. What's awesome is she built sort of like a Shawn Villaron comms agent, where she trained it based on a bunch of my communication, and she uses it to generate really high quality V1 drafts of my comms. And now all of a sudden, our back and forth is extremely short. We're running faster than ever. We're delivering better communications than ever. And she did it with AI. So if you're a single CEO, you're manning a one-person startup, you too can have an Angela. You can have a communication director. Microsoft would call it Copilot. But you can use AI to get those high-quality drafts where you do a little bit of tweaks, and then you go. Maybe you don't know the right comm strategy for a particular moment. Ask AI, hey, give me a comm strategy for this particular outcome. And just like I would do with Angela, we go back and forth with it, get it dialed in and start executing. And so I get really excited when I think about the power, the scale we can provide individuals. We can make an individual just as powerful, just as impactful as a Fortune 500 CEO. That's transformative.
Well, let's stay on that one person CEO. Just wondering, in your thoughts, your professional opinion, do you think there is that chance maybe in the next 10 years or so there will be that one person unicorn company? What do you think, if that is a possibility, what do you think's currently missing now? What are the missing pieces?
Well, I'd love to be that one person unicorn company. But yeah, like in all seriousness, I remember hearing about this concept a couple of years ago when AI really had its inflection moment. And I was a little skeptical back then. But as I've seen the pace of AI change, I really do think we're going to see the one person unicorn. I don't know if it's 7 to 10 years out. My intuition says it's a little bit faster than that. I also would be willing to bet it'll happen in the Bay Area, but that's just my bias. Now, in terms of how we unlock this, what are the things that are going to get us to that one person unicorn? I think it starts with really sort of leaning into this new capability around agents and the ability to have agents do entire workflows on your behalf, to have team of agents work together for shared outcomes. I think agents, as it matures, as the technology gets more capable, more powerful, becomes more mainstream, I think that's going to be a key enabler. The other piece of this, though, is about what we call at Microsoft responsible AI. If somebody's going to scale to the point where their company is worth $1 billion, you're going to have to demonstrate that you're reliable, you're secure, you respect privacy, you're compliant, you have auditing capabilities, you're accessible. And I think that is one of the next things that this AI era needs to embrace. I think the big companies are doing a reasonably good job at this because they have to. But I think for that unicorn to pop out, that single person unicorn, they're going to have to do the same things that some of these large enterprises are doing. And then maybe the last thing that I think might be the real unlock is more of a societal component than a technology component. We look at these brands like Microsoft, and we have a saying internal at Microsoft where Microsoft runs on trust. We've spent the last 50 years hopefully convincing people to trust us with their most important data, running their companies, their institutions on our technology. And so for a one-person unicorn to come out, we have to change the way society evaluates companies. And that person is going to have to convince them that, yes, a single person can be trusted with their documents, their workflows, their intellectual property. And that's going to require a lot of societal change. In fact, that's actually of the three topics, I think that's the one that will be the long pole, is the societal change.
That's interesting. Okay, so we talked kind of about the future, the one person unicorn. But even before that, let's talk about today. There's a lot of people that are brand new graduates that are thinking, this is an AI world. How do I even stand out in the job market? I'll be unemployed. Why did I even go to college? Or people right now in the job market that are going, I'm going to be replaced. Like, how does one person, and let's go back to the recent graduates, really stand out now in an AI-driven job market?
Yeah, again, I always follow the data because I think the data helps us understand how are things playing out today and how are things going to play out in the near term. if we look at the work trend index data from 2024, I think it tells us a couple of important things about the evolution of the labor market. 8 out of 10 Bay Area leaders reported that they would prefer not to hire somebody without AI skills. Furthermore, 8 out of 10 leaders, they actually would prefer to hire somebody with AI skills and less experience or no experience than somebody with no AI skills and a ton of experience. The conclusion here is that AI skills, that is now the currency of the global labor market. If you want to stand out, if you want to be eligible for these great competitive jobs, you have to be an AI expert. And so if I was a recent grad, I would be playing with every one of these tools. I would be experimenting. I would make myself an AI expert. And I was talking to a couple of PowerPoint interns the other day, and I was explaining to them that for the first time in my career, there's really no playbook here that's been established. We are writing the AI playbook today, every single day we come to work. We have never had a moment where early in career employees have had such a powerful voice in the construction of our playbook, because we are learning collectively how to use AI, what works, what doesn't, what jobs to be done can be handled completely by AI, which ones can be assisted by AI, and which ones, frankly, today aren't helped by AI. And so for me, it's all about becoming the AI expert. That is going to be a no regrets investment that will make you incredibly valuable to basically any employer in almost any sector of society.
And now let's look at the whole Bay Area. As the engineer site lead for the Bay Area, what emerging technologies are your teams most excited about right now?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, the AI space changes about every 15 minutes. We have a bit of a joke on the PowerPoint team where our plans on Monday probably will not last till Friday because the world is changing so fast. But for us, or at least for me, when I think about the 2 or 3 things that I care the most about, that I get excited about, it starts with AI agents. And it's because it has the ability to drive so much value to the individual, to the entire company. It will simply redefine how all of us work. And so for me, as these agents get more popular, the systems get more capable, we start to think through some of those social dynamics that we have to make progress on. That is going to fundamentally, in my view, change the world for the better. And this is going to directly go back all the way full circle to work-life integration, work-life balance. It's going to give us a better situation to be in. So I'm very bullish on agents. The other thing that I get excited about are reasoning models. I've been around so long that there have been features we've wanted to build for years, and we've never had the technology to a point where we could do it. And like coming up with a plan to create the narrative for a presentation on a really complex topic, that was beyond technology up until relatively recently. But the reasoning models are advancing so quickly. It is like you have a PhD student or an expert, speech writer sitting there with you, helping you understand, hey, this is what we're going to go do research, and this is what we're going to do with that research and the conclusions we're going to make. As those reasoning models continue to improve, the capabilities are just going to get better, and the outcomes are going to be just even more successful, again, faster. The last thing I might throw in there is I love the image and the video generation tech. I got a 13-year-old, and we've been using generative AI for the last 2 or 3 years to help her sell her Girl Scout cookies. And the way I would describe it is a couple of years ago, she would have an idea for like a visual for some like digital artifact. And we would have to go find the thing that was closest to her vision, but it was never her vision. Remember, she's a 10-year-old. Like it just didn't exist. And then what we started to see was things shift from a technology perspective. So at one point, she wanted a man hiking in a forest made of brownies and cookies. The likelihood that that photo existed on the internet was essentially zero, right? We used generative AI within 5 minutes to build it. And she could dial it in. Hey, make this guy bigger, make the brownies, more gooey. It's that kind of advance in the technology that it's going to give all of us the ability to communicate our way in a non-compromised. This is exactly the way I wanted to land my point. And so I just want to geek out on the image and video generation stuff. So those are the 3 things that have me excited about the Bay Area.
All right, just one more question before wrapping it up, and that's if you had to give one piece of advice to founders or technologists building the next generation of workplace tools, what would it be?
One is tough, but let me sort of give you my spiel here. One of my biggest worries about this era is that it is so often technology driven. We get excited about technology. I get a model to do this, and I get a model to do that. I keep going back to my team and then the people I work with and remind us that we're always building a product for a person, and that person has a goal in mind. And our job is to get them to success as fast as we possibly can. So I would say, please stay focused on the customer, understand who they are, what they're trying to do, what success looks like. And most importantly, how do they today try to get to that point of success? Then once you understand that flow, you've got to look at the technology and then ask yourself, what can that technology do? What are the capabilities that it has today? And maybe what are the capabilities it's going to have in 3 to 6 months? And then use that to back into solving a problem for the user. And this is a little different than the way that we've built product in the past, where we understood the user and then just said, what technology can we use to solve their problem? It's a subtle, but I think incredibly important difference in terms of how we actually, how we successfully build products. If you don't do it this way, you're often pushing a rock up a hill, trying to get some of the new AI tech to do things that it's just not very good at today.
And Shawn, if anyone wants to find out more information about you, what you're working on, what's the best way to go about doing that?
So I love conversations like this. So I would love to engage, folks in your audience. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so please take a look, hook me up, follow me on LinkedIn. I love having conversations. So please engage me there. From a Microsoft perspective, we have a local Bay Area blog that we post all sorts of stuff about what we're doing as a team, things that are happening in the Bay Area. So we'd love to have you check out the blog. And then for those of you who are running organizations and thinking about the transformation we're seeing around AI, I would definitely suggest you check out the Work Trend Index website we have posted on Microsoft's site. Those, I'd say, the 3 big go-dos perhaps for your listeners today.
Fantastic. We'll have Shawn's LinkedIn in the show notes. And for our audience out there, well, I'm not the host of the Silicon Valley podcast. I'm an investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. Connect with me on LinkedIn. And for everyone that's a huge fan of the show, if you want to go to our archives, we have some incredible interviews there. And plus, to find out more about what we're up to in the future, go to thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. Once again, that's thesiliconvalleypodcast.com. And with that, Shawn, I got to thank you for taking the time to be on this week's episode of the Silicon Valley Podcast.
You bet. Thanks for having me.